AngularJS is a structural framework. Okay, so the definition of AngularJS is AngularJS is a structural framework for dynamic web applications. For dynamic web applications. Okay, so using AngularJS, we can implement large-scale applications. Okay, large applications or smaller applications we can implement. Okay, so AngularJS is a structural framework for dynamic web applications, and use HTML language, HTML language as a template language. Okay, use HTML as a template language and external extend HTML's syntax. Okay, so a template language is a external HTML syntax. Okay, extend HTML syntax to express our applications. To express our applications, since application components clearly. Components clearly. Okay, so using AngularJS, we can implement each module as a different component. Okay, so first of all, we have to know about library and framework. Library. So what is the library actually? So a collection of functions which are useful when writing webhooks. A collection of functions. A collection of functions which are useful when writing web applications. When writing web applications. Okay, and framework, a particular implementation of web application, that is a different syntax. Okay, a particular implementation of web app. Okay, that is called the syntax. Okay, so using AngularJS, so there is a different features available. So features of AngularJS, features of AngularJS, data binding, and the second one, DOM control structure, for repeating or showing and hiding DOM elements. Okay, DOM elements. And the third one, form validations. And the fourth one, so there is a new behavior for the DOM elements attached attach to new behavior for DOM elements. DOM elements means HTML elements. 5. So reusable components. Reusable components. Okay, so these are the 5 important features in AngularJS. Okay, so each and every concept we can use, okay, when implementing the application. Okay, data binding concept, okay, use it to bind the data from remote servers. Okay, remote servers through services. Okay, services and DOM controller structuring. This is view part. uh, Manipulate the user interface, manipulating data to display to the user. And third one, form validations. Okay, like javascript validations. Okay, uh, before submit the data to the server, we need to validate the form. Okay, the user is entered the correct data or not. Okay, before submitting data into the server, okay, we can validate the form using AngularJS. And new behaviors is we can create our own custom elements, own custom elements, and custom attributes. Okay, and reusable components. Once you implemented the component, and you can use unlimited number of times. Unlimited number of times. Okay, so these are the main features. So most of the words we have to use in AngularJS. Template, okay, and directives, model, scope, expressions, okay, expressions, and filters, view, next, and data binding, controllers, controllers, and dependency injection, dependency injection. Next, injector, module, service, and factory. And the next to the directives, custom directives. Okay, so these are the main useful words in AngularJS. Okay, So almost we have to use when implement the application, the large scale application, all these things. Okay. So this is the document I have prepared in AngularJS. Okay, so AngularJS is a structural framework for dynamic web applications, and let's use HTML. Okay, HTML language as a template language, and let's extend HTML syntax to express our applications components clearly. And these are the features. AngularJS supports MVC framework. Okay, Angular supports MVC framework. MVC framework means model, view, and controller. Okay, so these are the three main parts. Okay, the code is divided into three parts: model, view, controller. So model contains uh, database functionality. Okay, model, using model we can interact with the database, interact with the database. Okay, and view, user interface, user interface, and controller. Okay, controller takes the request, takes the request from the browser, from the URL, from browser URL, and execute appropriate appropriate model. Okay, that is model here. Okay, execute the appropriate model and retrieve the data and return the data to view, that is called user interface. Okay, so controller takes the request from the browser and execute the appropriate model. Okay, the model is interact with the database, and model return the data to the controller, and after that controller return the data to the user, so that user can see the like data in the browser. Okay, this is called model view controller. Okay, this framework supports AngularJS and data models. So I will explain in the coding data model and custom directives. Custom directives means we can implement our new elements. Okay, mm, using custom directives, you can implement new elements, new attributes. Okay, new attributes. Uh, Here is the three type of custom directives is there. Okay, element directives, attribute directives, and class directives. Okay, these are the three type of directives is there. Using these three types we can implement custom directives. Okay, I will explain in later classes. Okay, custom directives are also a very important concept in AngularJS. Okay, so most of the applications like uh, secure applications. Okay, compulsory the custom directives are used to implement large scale applications. Okay, uh, and the next, filters. So filters are the data, filter the data to the that is the format the data to display the to the user. Filters are the format of the data to display to the user. Data display to the user. Data display to the user. And display to the user. So here also number of filters is there. Okay, and I will explain that one also. And the DOM manipulation. DOM manipulation nothing but we can find out the HTML elements in AngularJS. Okay, to assign the values or to get the values from the HTML elements. And services and factories. These services and factories are also very important concept. Okay, so to execute the remote services. Okay, like web APIs. Okay, APIs. If you want to execute the APIs, okay, in AngularJS, compulsory we need services and the factories. Okay, so to start the AngularJS application, so we have to download the AngularJS library from angularjs.org. Okay, click on this. So Angular versions are two versions. Okay, Angular 1 and Angular 2. Okay, and we can do the examples on only AngularJS 1. Okay, so this is the serial file for the AngularJS. Okay, this library we have to use, and we can download the zip file and uncompressed file. Okay, and minified file. Okay, this is the production version and the development version and zip file, and this is the version of uh, AngularJS. So you can copy this library, otherwise you can download this. Okay, and here this is the our project folder AngularJS. Okay, this folder contains only document for file. Okay, so create an HTML form, sample.html. So like jQuery library, okay, we have to use AngularJS library also. So copy this and paste here. Okay, use script tag and source attribute and close the script. Okay, so this is the AngularJS library. So we can use Serial from Google APIs. Okay, so actually AngularJS developed by Google. Okay, the main. Okay, so AngularJS implemented and developed by Google, and this is the library path. Okay, and first of all, module. Okay, in AngularJS to implement the application, so compulsory we have to implement module in the AngularJS application. Okay, for every application, module is compulsory. So without module you can do and you can't implement remaining parts of the application. So remaining parts of the application means like a custom directives, filters and controllers and services and factories. Okay, so anything you can't implement. So without module. So module is a container for the different parts of your application. Okay, so this is the main container and the controllers, services, filters, directives, etc. And Angular apps don't have a main method. Like C Sharp or Java, there is no main method like a public static void main. Okay, in Java or C Sharp. Instead, modules declaratively specify how an application should be bootstrapped. Okay, to execute the application in Bootstrap, okay, in AngularJS application, okay, this is the starting point of the application. So this is very easy to declare. Okay, the declaration process is easier to understand. Okay, the very easy process to declare the module for every application, and you can package code as reusable modules. Okay, so once you implement the module, you can reuse in multiple applications. Okay, one second. Okay, we can reuse the modules for different applications. So modules can be loaded in any order. So any order means we can implement different parts of our application in any order. Okay, so like controllers, services, filters, directives. Okay, and unit test only how to load relevant modules. Okay, keeps them fast. So module by module we can unit test. Okay, we can done the unit test. Next in AngularJS, so public objects and the private objects, two type of objects is there. Public objects names start with single dollar, and private objects names start with double dollar. Okay, and the next one is directives. So AngularJS directives are extended HTML attributes with the prefix ng. Okay, after complete the module, after you declare the module for the application, okay, next we have to use directives to implement the AngularJS application. Okay, so AngularJS directives are external HTML attributes with the prefix ng. So for example, here div tag is there. Okay, so for div tag we can implement new attribute like ng my attribute. Okay, this is our own custom attribute. Okay, so in AngularJS we have predefined attributes. Okay, that is called directives. Okay, and we can implement our custom own attributes and custom elements also. Okay, custom attributes. Uh, so the attributes with the prefix is ng. Okay, so compulsory we need to prefix the ng and after that attribute name. Okay, this is the core collection of directives you would use in your template code to build AngularJS application. Okay, so here number of directives is there. So predefined directives. So first of all, ng app directive. This ng app directive is the root directive for the AngularJS application. Okay, use this directive to auto bootstrap an application. Auto bootstrap an application means to run the application. Okay, to execute the application. This is the starting point for the application. Okay, ng app. is the root element. Okay, root directive. The ng app directive designates root element of the application. So we can define ng app directive in the body tag or in HTML tag. Okay, it defines AngularJS application. So here in this HTML form, so we can define that ng app directive in HTML tag ng app. Okay, so this is the new attribute. Okay, new directive. Okay, to start the AngularJS application, this is the starting point of the application. Okay, starting directive of the application. Okay, so here we can declare in HTML directive, in HTML element or in the body tag. Okay, so if you implement ng-app directive in the body tag, the total entire body is in AngularJS. Okay, and if you implement this ng-app directive in HTML tag, the entire HTML form will be in under AngularJS. Next directive is controller. The ng controller directive attaches a controller class to the view. Okay, the ng controller directive defines the application controller. So a controller is a JavaScript object created by standard JavaScript object constructor. Okay, these controllers are used to implement different parts of our application. Okay, so this is the controllers are the mediator between uh, models and view. Okay, for example, to retrieve the data from the database, okay, services we have to use. From the services, controller will read the data from the database using services and return the data to the view. Okay, in AngularJS also same. This controllers job. Here we can declare ng controller. Okay, so this controller, ng app controller and ng controller directive. So if you run this example, okay, nothing is there. Okay, only body tag and a header tag and HTML tag. Okay, here you can observe class equal to ng scope, okay, is applied. AngularJS internally different classes is applied to bind the data or to create the controllers. Okay, so next directive is model directive. The ng model directive binds the random HTML controls. So for example, you want to save the data into the database. Okay, the text box values uh, save the data into the database. Okay, you can save the text box values in one particular scope variable in AngularJS. Okay, using ng model directive and send that variable to the controller and to the services to save the text box value into the database. For example, input type equal to text box and placeholder equal to name. Okay, and close the element. Okay, this is the text box. So this text box value, okay, we want to save this text box value into the database. So in that scenario, okay, we have to save that text box value in one particular variable, okay, using ng model directive. So we can send that variable to the database. ng model directive, and my name is the variable here. Okay, the name, the text box name is stored in my name variable, and this my name variable sent to the controller, and this controller sent to the services to store the data in the database. Okay, so go to inspect. You can see here ng model equal to my name is a variable, class equal to ng present and ng attached and ng valid. Ng valid is a validation for the text box. Okay, so this different classes is applied internally. Okay, and next, so for example, I want to display, okay, this text box name in the span. Okay, immediately when you are typing in the text box, and display the text in the span when you are typing. So for that, ng bind directive we can use. ng bind directive is used to replace the text content of the specified HTML element. So for example, you want to display data from the database. Okay, data from the database, use ng bind directive, and we can call the variable name here. Okay, this variable coming from the controller, or directly here we can use ng model variable also. So now when you are typing name in text box, okay, immediately the name will display in span. Okay, so Angular. So text is not displaying here in the span, because so here we define the controller here, but not implemented, right? Only controller defined here. So that in this example we don't need to implement the controller. We can remove this. Okay. Okay, AngularJS. So like this, it will display the value. Okay, ng model directive binds the value of HTML control. Okay, this is the scope variable. The value stored in my name variable, and ng bind directive binds the value from the scope variable into the HTML element. Okay, the simple ng model directive used to bind the value of HTML control, and bind directive is used to bind the value, okay, from the scope variable. So this is called scope variable. Okay, this total HTML tag will be is the Angular root scope. Okay, this is totally root scope. In the root scope, these are scope variables. Next, ng click directive. So ng click directive nothing but an on-click event in JavaScript. Okay, so if you want to execute some function in AngularJS, okay, we can use ng click directive to execute the function. So click directive allows you to specify custom behavior and element. For example, I want to display, okay, name in text box from the function, okay, from function or from controller. So to execute the function in AngularJS, compulsory we have to use controller and app. For app, my app. So here you can give any name here. Okay, this is not mandatory. Any name you can give here, and controller also same. My controller. For controller also you can give any name. Prasad controller. Okay, so like this you can give any name. Next, here take one button, type equal to button, and value equal to display name. Okay, so here we can use ng click directive. Don't use on click event. Ng click equal to here function name, my function. To execute this function, we have to create the module for the application, and after that we have to implement the controller also. After the controller, we have to implement the function. Script tag, script tag. In the script tag, create module for the application. This is very easier process to create module. Okay, my module or my app. Okay, Angular dot module. So module name is my app. Okay, this name and this name should be same. Okay, we are creating the module for the entire application. Okay, so based on this module, okay, the app is, variable is created here, module is created, and using this module you can implement controllers, services and factories, anything. My app dot controller, my controller, comma, function, and scope. Okay, so this is the declaration and implementation of controller. Using module we can implement controller. Without module we cannot implement these controllers. And services and filters, anything. Okay, this is the base for the AngularJS application. And now I want to execute my function. When you click on this button, use scope dot my function equal to function. Okay, so this is the function, my function. This function is executed when you click on this button. Okay, using scope. This is the scope public variable. Okay, this scope is the entire application. Okay, this is the root scope. In the scope, using this public variable, we need to call the scope functions and the scope variables in the controller. So without scope, we cannot call the functions and variables. Okay, compulsory use scope to call the variables and functions in the controller. And I want to display name in text box. When you click on the button, my name is the variable. Okay, my name is Harsha. Okay, the text will be displayed in text box. Okay, this is the scope variable. We are assigning this text to this variable. Okay, this variable text is assigned to text box. Okay, so click on this button. The text is displayed in text box, and again my name is Harsha also is displayed in span. Okay, because ng bind directive binds the value of binds the value from the scope variable. So this scope variable contains this text, so that here also text is displayed. Okay, so without implement the controller is one-way binding. Okay, you have to remember one thing: in AngularJS, one-way binding and two-way binding is there. So without implement the controller, okay, so this part like so without controller and no need this. This is only one-way binding. Okay, we are enter the text and binding the value in the display the value in the span. The model ng app. Okay, okay, so we need this library. Okay, so this is actually one-way binding. So now uncomment this. So you are binding the text from the controller, and again you can change this hi, hello. Okay, so like this we can change the from text box. From two ways we can bind the value. So from controller we are binding the text to the span, and again we can change the text in text box. The modifications will be done in the span also. Okay, so this is the core part of AngularJS and introduction of AngularJS and how AngularJS will work. Okay, and how create the ng app directive and the controller, how we can implement module for the application. Okay, and how we can implement the controllers. So in real-time applications, don't include the script here. So create one JS file. Okay, app.js and place that code in app.js file. Okay, and we have to call the app.js file in HTML form so that it will work. Same functionality will work. So this is the model for the entire application. So that next we can implement data services, service, service name, my service, comma, function, and the scope, everything we can implement using app. So there is a two brackets is there, square brackets. These two brackets is used to call the third party modules. If you want to use third party modules in the application, so we need to call the third party module names in the these square brackets. Tomorrow I will explain that one also. So that's it for today. So this is the introduction of AngularJS and small example and how we can create a AngularJS application and ng app directive and ng controller and the model, bind and ng click directives.